GERO 200, how are you? All right, so this is Sunday, September 26th for your lecture, which is Monday, September 27th. All right, and so I'm in instructor view right now. I'm going to go straight up to student view so that we're all on the same page. And I just want to thank you guys for doing such a great job on the first writing assignment. That it's all about training you how to do just a little bit of research and collecting your own data, which is pretty cool. And I think a lot of you guys found that the World in Data website is really pretty spectacular. And it just, we were just honing in on stuff relevant to gerontology. But there's websites like this and others that that are similar to this that are very useful in terms of your future professional career. If you need to make a presentation and you want to look for economic trends or business trends, what better place to go to than to look at some of the global data sets that have looked at historical trends in terms of economics, and then also be able to make some projections. And that's what, basically that's what your jobs are all about. All right, very cool. Thank you to the team too, working diligently on grading this first CT assignment. And we do get emails from people saying, what's a CT assignment? All you really need to do is look at these videos and then take a look at the reiteration of the syllabus. If you click right in here, in terms you saw, September 22nd, what does that mean? Then you would come down here, you'd see it all laid out. You see the assignment as it's laid out again, and here it is, our world in data. You come down here, here's a slide deck, it tells you what to do. Here's a YouTube video, it tells you what to do. Here is more information. Here's a rubric. It's pretty laid out. Okay, all right, cool. Next, let's go right into our weekly assignment. And if you haven't, calendar up the next one, which is November 10th. All right, and start talking to your parents about some of these issues. You're gonna love what's going on. And by the way, congratulations to Griffin Calapinto, a San Clemente boy, who won the U.S. Open of surfing down at Huntington Beach, and a bigger congratulations to Caroline Simmers from Oceanside, 15 years old, and just ripped it. Okay, all right, here we are, our weekly assignments. Okay, so as indicated, there's a reiteration of things that are happening, and we see other dates that are covered in here as well. We're going to go into this. Again, these are just the short-term primers. We had these kind of theoretical background on the biology of aging. Now we're going to get, we did cancer, which is a tough one. We're going to go into diabetes, which is a pretty significant issue. We have stressed all throughout this class globally, and especially in our country as a westernized nation where we have nothing but resources, but we actually have way too much access to food, where we don't work for our food. And so we have this kind of, it is an epidemic in the US for obesity, okay? And going hand in hand with obesity, okay, and the biology of aging and these diseases that we've talked about is diabetes, okay? And diabetes is a huge risk factor for other diseases like vascular disease, anywhere a blood vessel goes, okay? And so we're going to look at those complications of diabetes today. People that are in the field of Alzheimer's disease, we're going to talk about type 2 diabetes. This is the most common. It's a chronic disease of aging, and it's age-related, okay? But people are calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes because it's clear that it's the blood vessels that are impacted. People have kidney failure from diabetes. People go blind from diabetes because the blood vessels get all screwed up. People lose their limbs in diabetes because their blood vessels screw up. So it really comes down to this kind of diabetes first, vascular disease second, significant impact on any organ that has a blood vessel, like a heart attack as well, heart failure later. Okay, all righty. Very, very cool. And then you can see we're gonna get into some real nuts and bolts. Everybody's having to deal with caregiving. Every one of you will. And then we're gonna fly right into some true business models. We're gonna do it economics. We're gonna do retirement planning. Okay, do some really cool law stuff for those of you that go into law school. Why this is important, and I'll give you lots of stuff terms of talking to your parents, we'll look at estate planning. All right, let's go back into diabetes. Okay, here we go. All righty, so my video is going to go right here. Okay, and so this is not as rigorous as the one before. We had to do a deep dive into the website provided by NIH and National Cancer Institute. This one we just give you a couple clear PDF files just to look at and then answer your quiz from. So what do? You come down here, remember, open up your quiz right here, okay? And then you open up this again in a second browser and you just go, you look at your quiz questions, all right? Hey, I'm gonna open my quiz right now, all right? So I'm gonna hit begin, okay? And there it is, okay? So, oh, here's the World Health Organization. I think there's a little article down there by the World Health Organization. How do you prevent type 2 diabetes, okay? And we're gonna have, this is related to your discussion. We're gonna talk about body mass index, okay? The goods and the bads, smoking, okay? Like I said, man, you just gotta have purposeful living. You get out there and you do things actively, okay? Long-term complication, okay? I just talked about this, okay? All right. Low blood pressure? I don't think so, okay? High blood pressure, maybe. Kidney disease? That's where a blood vessel goes, okay? Kidney failure, even in diabetes. Baldness? Not so much. You know, you can thank your dad for that one. And yeah, so that's how you go through this, okay? All right. So open up a second browser. I'm not going to do it. You'll open the second browser, and that's how you're going to go about answering the questions of the quiz. But what we're going to do is take a look at the different instruments that we've provided to help you understand diabetes. Real quick, American Diabetes Association, so it's awesome. Primer on diabetes, okay? All righty, so we've talked a lot about overnutrition, okay? There is a combination of too many simple sugars, refined sugars. Okay, that's going to put you at risk. And more importantly, like I said, if you overnutrition, you get abdominal fat. Okay, and this obesity that is also called visceral fat causes the receptors for insulin, and you release insulin when you have a sugar load. You just had a candy bar. They're not responsive, okay? And it causes a lot of problems, okay? This insulin resistance, that is the most common form of diabetes, the age-related type 2, all right? All right, so normally, okay, like I said, you just had a candy bar, in comes the glucose, all right? You digest it in your gut, goes into your blood, and then your pancreas is gonna, boom, secrete insulin, and then that insulin runs to your muscle cells, your fat cells, your liver cells, and it's like a key fitting into a lock. It just says, hey, let's throw some open channels into the cell and vacuum, you know, the glucose out of the blood, and we'll store it for later when we need it. Okay, and that's how we operate. Okay, when you don't have any glucose, then you send out a different lock. Okay, and that's called glucagon, and that goes to the same stored glucose and says, let's release it now. So you're just kind of doing this all day long. All right. So high blood glucose. Like a hyperactive person has a lot of activity. Hyperglycemia means you have a lot of blood glucose, okay? What causes that, okay? You can have lots of reasons. You can be a type 1 diabetic where your immune system attacks your pancreas. You have too much insulin, or too little insulin, I'm sorry. And so the glucose doesn't get packaged, okay? You can have your liver, that is this storehouse, release too much glucose, okay? Or like I said, you can have insulin receptor resistance and you can't use the insulin as well. Use the insulin well and you don't package it. All right, so if you have a bunch of sugar in your blood, everywhere sugar goes, you ever notice if you take some sugar and you put it into a glass and swirl it, it disappears, okay? Because sugar surrounds itself with water, okay? It's like a cloaking device, okay? And so all that sugar goes down into your kidneys, then your bladder, and you pee it out when you have hyperglycemia. In fact, the urine of diabetics tends to be real sweet. Not that I would taste it, but it's a sweet smelling urine, okay? So if you're pulling the water out with the sugar, you're peeing out all the water because the sugar's cloaked in it, you're gonna be thirsty, all right, because you're going to actually lose blood volume from that, okay? So you have increased thirst, increased urination, okay? What else happens? The blood vessels, like I said, are a big issue with diabetics because you get this candy coating of the blood vessels that causes inflammation. The inflammation causes the blood vessels not to work right, and the in and out of the movement of goodies from the blood to the eye and from the eye back to the blood doesn't work right, and you start having vision problems and even permanent vision loss, okay? Now, if your insulin receptors are not working well, okay, then what's going to happen, okay? Even though you've released the insulin, even though you have blood glucose, the glucose doesn't get into your cells, and so your cells are like, hey, where's my energy? Because we use our cells, okay, they take up the glucose and they turn it into this direct energy molecule called ATP. It's a credit card that all cells use. No sugar, no ATP, the cells don't work, and you feel major fatigue, okay? What else happens? Everywhere there's a blood vessel, there's a problem, okay? So as a result, you cut yourself. The blood vessels don't deliver the goods as well. The bacteria takes over, so you're not delivering the immune system down to those cuts as well as either, and you have really slow wound healing from cuts. As a result, you get a lot more infections, okay? And again, like I said, obesity is a risk factor to developing diabetes, but in the end, if you're not able to absorb glucose, then it goes and you have weight loss, okay? Nausea and vomiting are another problem, okay? Now, long-term consequences, again, chronic disease of aging, blindness, kidney disease, where you will lose your kidneys and you will be on dialysis the rest of your life until you, if you're lucky enough, get a kidney transplant. This is why, exercise and moderation in diet are so key. Reduce your stress, all these things, okay? Everywhere the blood goes, especially deep into your legs, it supplies oxygen and goodies to the nerves. You have really crappy blood flow to your lower limbs, your lower legs, your feet. You start getting nerve damage. Okay, that's called peripheral neuropathy. So it's out in the periphery. Combination of nerve damage, combination of really bad immune function out there in your feet, and what happens? You get infections and it becomes necrotic. It takes over the foot, the leg, and you have to have an amputation. This, avoidable too, okay? Everywhere there's a blood vessel, there's a problem with diabetes. Then you also are at serious risk for having a clogged blood vessel to the heart, having the heart muscle die, called a heart attack, or a clogged blood vessel to the brain, having the brain tissue die, that's a stroke, all right? So, two main types of diabetes. Type 1, this is a fairly rare autoimmune, no fault of anybody's. The immune system just messes up and it attacks the pancreas. So now you cannot produce insulin in response to that candy bar you just ate, all right? So what do we do for type 1 diabetics? We can't give them drugs. They're going to augment the pancreas' ability to release insulin. Can't do that because what? They don't have insulin-producing cells. They've been eaten up by the immune system. So type 1 diabetics are completely dependent on insulin shots, okay? Just the way it is, okay? It's a tough road to hoe, all right? Type 2 diabetes, okay? The pancreas is producing insulin. In fact, it'll start overproducing insulin because your receptors are resistant to the action of insulin. They don't perceive the insulin as well. So you just up the game and up the game, start producing more and more insulin. Upping your game too hard can be a bummer, okay? Because after a while, the pancreas will begin to die off, and then you are both receptors are screwed, and your ability to produce insulin is screwed as well. All right. So here's some stats right here, okay? 1 in 20 people in our country, okay, have diabetes. All right, type 1 diabetes. All right, so that's a tough road to hoe. Like I said, relatively rare. Okay. When we look. Again, you can just kind of go through this. These are some of the issues that a type 1 diabetic has. They can go into ketoacidosis, okay, because of their inability to utilize the sugar. So then they start burning fats and exclusively, okay, because they don't have any insulin. and so they exclusively use fats. And we've heard about the ketogenic diet. Well, this is somebody that's constantly in ketogenic situation because they can't use the glucose that comes in the diet, and the pH gets too low when this happens, or their blood becomes very acidic, and it can be life-threatening. All right, cool. Next, all right, we can look at type 2 diabetes now. All right, again, most people are diagnosed over the age of 40. Okay, it's associated with obesity. Okay, a family history. There's a genetic predisposition. Okay, thirst, urination, tired, blurred vision, infections. Like I said, people are oftentimes unaware. The statistics on diabetes in our country are really, really sad. Okay, so these are some of the things you need to do. Educate yourself about diet and exercise. Eat healthy. Okay, luckily we have blood glucose monitoring systems that are like a little patch now. They look at they can sample the blood glucose in the skin. Before you used to do a pinprick, so things have improved in that way. Have physical activity. Medications could include insulin, but there's a lot of other ones. We can have medications that will reduce the absorption of glucose in your tummy, medications that will increase how much glucose you pee out, other medications called incretins, okay, GLP-1, that improves the pancreas response to secrete insulin when you have glucose, okay? What are the risk factors? Okay, lack of exercise, obesity, family history, sorry. If there is, again, a history of gestational diabetes, okay, and for women that have gone through this, and then we have, age being the biggest one right there, okay, and there's different risks based on ethnicity, okay. We can see that how poorly we have done over time, okay. We're looking at the percentage of people that have diabetes across our country, and you can see it's color-coded here. We can see that things have got really, really bad right here, okay? So we look at obesity and we look at diabetes, and you see it goes hand in hand. This is in 2010. I'll show you what we look at now, okay? All right, so roughly 10% of our country is diabetic, all right? So that's around 33 million. So this has increased in this since this PowerPoint slide deck was put together. And then an additional third of our country is pre-diabetic and hovering on it. So they're having a lot of trouble with inflammation and trouble monitoring, maintaining normal blood glucose levels, all right? So these are, again, all stats. The burden, okay, like I said, blindness, kidney failure, lower limb amputations, heart attack, stroke, these are all big issues for somebody that's a diabetic. And sadly, it is controllable, okay? It's controllable with a real consistent dedication to diet and exercise. For you guys that are business majors, this was listed at $245 billion. Today's dollars is probably closer to about $350 billion a year in our country, okay? So much money is spent towards healthcare in terms of diabetes. Don't forget, we are not even out of this pandemic. Who is at high risk for being hospitalized, being intubated with COVID-19 and dying? Diabetics were at super high risk because of their chronic inflammatory state, okay? The immune system flips out when you have lots of obesity. The immune system flips out when you have candy coating on every protein, okay? It's a simplistic way of viewing it. It's called advanced glycation end products. So yeah, it's a big deal, okay? This talks about pre-diabetes. Again, if you're pre-diabetes, you're at high risk of getting diabetes if you don't get your act together, all right? All right, so just continue to look through this. Great little slide deck about this. Down here, this is a short report, 2 pages. In fact, that's page 1. The second page about kind of a commentary from the World Health Organizations. Again, you look at it, diabetic retinopathy, okay? Diabetic neuropathy, those are the damage to the nerves in your lower limbs, okay? On and on and on. Blood pressure problems, okay? So serious healthcare implications. This right here is a link that I put out there that is about the 2020 report again. And again, it's looking at new cases. What would be new case? Incidence, okay? Existing cases, that's prevalence, okay? And then, of course, the number is terrible, okay? So 1 in 10 Americans, like I said, 34 million Americans are diabetic, okay? That's where you're done, and you're going to have to really, really be careful. You kind of probably take medicine and use exercise and diet. And then we see 1 in 3, okay, approaching 90 million Americans are pre-diabetes. They're teetering on it, okay. And it goes through again some of the risk factors right there. So yeah, it's super important that we grab hold of this, okay. This right here is a quick video that explains insulin resistance, where the insulin binds the receptor, but it's unable to put these little vacuum cleaner channels out in the cell membrane, so the glucose does not get sucked into the cell. And it goes through all of that, and then it looks at the complications, as does John. John's a great guy, and he really, really explains diabetic complications, okay? This goes through, this is a chart that illustrates, again, this concept that the glucose is not going into the cells because your receptors, even though the insulin binds to it, they don't cause the change that you need to vacuum out the glucose, okay? All righty. And then these are the complications. Anywhere there's a blood vessel, the blood vessels get compromised by the diabetes. They candy coat the blood vessels. You get major inflammation. The cells that are on the surface of the blood vessels, they're like this incredible machine of worker bee cells that allow things to go in and out of any tissue there's a blood vessel, like your brain, like your heart, okay, like your muscles, everything. And if they get inflamed and no longer work right, you got a problem, okay? Problem like right here, increased disease of stroke, increased likelihood of getting Alzheimer's disease, heart attack, okay? We have down here the peripheral neuropathy, the vascularitis, so the inflammation of the blood vessels down here causing a loss of limbs, that neuropathy down here as well, kidney disease where you lose your kidneys, and then we have right here the retina, okay, they call it retinopathy, where you become blind, okay? So this is a serious business, all right? So we're looking right here, going from normal sized blood fat cells in your tummy, they call it visceral fat because it lines all of your intestines and all your other organs, liver, everything else. And then this is too much, okay? And there are a lot of different factors, okay? These are hormones that go wrong, These right here are called inflammatory cytokines. These are the ones that really put people at risk for the coronavirus, okay? And when you have too many inflammatory cytokines, then that causes the insulin resistance that results in reduced vacuum of the glucose out of the blood into the muscle, into any tissue in your body, okay? And then the liver, okay, all the body knows is, hey, the glucose is not getting in the cells, and the liver starts hyperdriving the glucose as well, all right, production. All right, so this explains why we have obesity. It's an incredible video. It gets into, it's not just energy in, energy out. Yes, that's a part of it, but it really gets into kind of the nuts and bolts of the changes that happen, that it's also this likelihood of causing inflammation. Why did we get here evolutionarily? Obviously, our ancestors from a couple thousand years ago, and we've been around for almost 1 million, okay, guys? So most of the times we were just cruising. We would eat, gorge ourselves, and then we might go 2 weeks without a meal, all right? So anybody that could store fat, they win, all right? So that was the winning version of being a human being. We have unlimited food now, and we're supposed to behaviorally not eat. That's against evolution. So that's the problem, okay? Now, when things start going awry because of obesity and because of high levels of blood glucose, then you get inflammation, okay? You also are looking at, based on the kind of diet you have this whole gut microbiome that it is permissive for diabetes. So there's a lot of factors that are contributing to it. All right, so check that out. Okay, this gets into BMI. It is a real simple mechanism for doctors to see whether or not you're obese or not, with the caveat that it does not work well to consider the kind of holistic view of the patient. So while we can look at BMI, okay, the best thing you can do is you also look for the waist to hip ratio. So this gives you a real index of whether or not you're having this visceral obesity. Okay, if it's pushing out here, okay, then yes, if you combine that with the BMI, then we got an issue. You know, if you're an Adonis, okay, and you're V-shaped, even you got lots of muscle, you can have a higher BMI, but your waist to hip ratio is going to be reduced, okay? And then there are also direct measures of muscle versus fat mass that can be done as well, all right? That being said, insurance companies don't have the time to do this, all right? So check this out. Again, this is your discussion right here. And do your BMI, okay? This shows you how to get in there. And these are the tables that healthcare, you know, big healthcare organizations, Kaiser Permanente, okay, as well as gigantic health insurance companies, they use these tables to assign risk, and they're going to charge you more money for your policy if your BMI is too high, all right? It is what it is. You can argue about being muscular after the fact, okay? And these are the classifications of the BMI right here. And what the BMI is basically doing is it's looking at your height and looking at your weight. And that's what it is, okay? It's a comparison of the two, right? So you see right here, it's kilograms in weight divided by your height in meters squared, okay? All right, awesome. Okay, this is right here, okay, a really cool life expectancy calculator. So do your BMI, okay, then come down here and do your life expectancy calculator. See what you think. Okay, are you ready for that? Do you want to live to 100? I don't know. Ask yourself that, okay? Alrighty, so go through it and you compare it, okay? Have fun with it, guys. It's a real cool discussion. That's it for now. Again, we're super excited about how seriously you guys took your first writing assignment. I love it, love it, love it. It shows you're engaged, shows yourself that you're throwing yourself into this class. And in peace, and we'll see you next week, all right? And right on.